The purpose of this video is to show how to use controls to change the data that appears in charts. My data is a set of financial ratios for General Electric last 5 years, and also the same data for the industry average. I want to create a chart that will display these ratios and compare GE to the industry average over time. First thing I need to do is to choose a control, so I'm going to go to View, Toolbars, and turn on the Forms toolbar. Excel comes with a number of built-in forms or controls, as you can see. And the one that I want is a combo box, which is also known as a drop-down list. So I click on that, and then I click and drag in the spreadsheet where I want the control to appear. Now I can get rid of the toolbar. To use the control, I first need to format it. So I right-click, choose Format Control, and there are a number of options that I need to set. The input range is the range of text strings that used to populate the box. So I choose my ratio names. The cell link is where the combo box reports which item has been chosen. This will be a number such as 1, 2, 3, depending on whether it's the first, second, or third item in the list. And I need to tell it where to store that on the worksheet. So I click in Cell Link, and I'll choose cell A8. The final item is the number of drop-down lines. Since I only have 3 ratios, I'm going to reduce that to 3 from the default of 8. Press OK, and my combo box should be ready to go. If I drop it down, you notice that it does in fact have the names of the ratios, and if I choose, say, the first ratio, you notice that it puts a 1 in cell A8, which was my cell link. At this point, now I need to gather my data. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to refer to the name of the company. That way, if I change the company name in the data later, this will automatically update. And I'm going to grab a reference to the industry average as well. The data that I'm going to use is the ratio data. So for example, if I choose gross margin, I want the first row to be charted. If I choose operating profit margin, I want the second row to be charted, and so on. To do that, I'm going to reference the data down here, but in order for it to change when I change the control, I need it to be based on the number that appears in cell A8. I can do this with the offset function. The offset function works by taking a base position, the reference, and then offsetting a certain number of rows and columns from that point. In this case, for General Electric, my reference point for this first cell is going to be cell B2, and I want to offset by the number of rows based on which item I've chosen. So I'm going to offset based on the value in A8. Freeze that reference so that I can copy it over. And I don't want to offset by any columns at all, so I'll put 0 for columns. Now in this case, I've chosen the gross margin, so the value that appears here should be the gross margin from cell B3, 36.39. And in fact, it works. Now if I copy that across, you can see that I've replicated the entire first row. Notice that if I now change my control, let's say I choose the second item, the numbers change and they now reference this row here, which is exactly what I want. I'll do that again for the industry average data. So now I've created a reference to my data, and you can see that as I change the control, it changes the data. That's the key to this technique. because I'm going to chart this data here. Before I do that, I want to create a chart title that's dynamic. That is, it will change as the data changes. To do that, I'm going to use a similar technique. I'm going to start with the offset function to grab the name of the ratio being charted. Same exact technique, and you can see now it says gross margin, whereas if I change it, it changes there. Now I'm going to add to that a little bit of data. First put in a line feed, which is character 13, and then the name of the company and versus industry average. So now you can see my title. That little box there represents the line feed, and that will appear correctly when I create the chart. So now I'm going to select my data, and I'm going to create a chart in the usual way. I want to create a line chart with no markers. You can see a sample of the chart. Now I need to fix this. In particular, I need to set the x-axis values, so I'm going to go to the Series tab, and for the x-axis labels I want to use the years. So I'll select that data up there, and now you can see that I have the years along the x-axis. Click Next. For the chart title, I want to use my dynamic title, but I can't reference it directly from here, so I'm going to put in a placeholder. I'll just type hello. For the x-axis, years. For the y-axis, ratio. And at this point I can hit finish. And I have my chart. Now let me enlarge that a little bit. And I'll change some font sizes just a little bit here. Okay, and clean up the chart itself. Now you can clearly see that I have a chart of the ratios. Now I want to change my chart title to my dynamic title. So I click in the chart title. I go to the formula bar, type equals, and click on the cell that contains my dynamic title. Hit enter, and now you can see the title appears. I'll change the size of that, and there's my chart. And you can see now that if I change the ratio from my drop down list, the chart updates as well. This is a great technique to use for presentations. And in fact, if I move my chart to its own chart sheet, I can also put a control in the chart itself. View, Toolbars, Forms, choose a combo box, draw it on the chart, close that, go to Format Control. For the input range, I go back to my sheet, set this up exactly like I did the previous one on the worksheet itself. Now I can change the chart from the chart without even seeing the actual data. I hope that you found this to be a useful tutorial. Thank you for watching.